Hello artists, I'm Dalene FM and you are watching The Epic Journey. So how can we learn to accurately see what we're looking at? Because like I said before, if you don't know that you're seeing something incorrectly, you won't necessarily be able to fix the problem. All you'll be able to see is that your drawing doesn't look as good as what you thought it did, and then what will happen is that you immediately assume that your powers of visual communication are lacking, whereas in fact it actually might be that your powers of seeing accurately are lacking. So to be able to tackle this problem head on, I'll give you a couple of practical examples, things that you can do that will help you to understand where your areas of learning to see accurately need to be improved. The first step is to set up something to draw that is relatively challenging, something that you know you have difficulty doing, like if you have a problem with hands, or if you, let's say you set up a still life of a flower, make sure that the flower is at a particular angle, a nice foreshortened angle, something challenging, not something easy like a coffee cup or an apple just sitting there on its own. Create a little composition, and then I want you to take a photograph of that composition. Now, yes, drawing from life is important, but for purposes of this particular practical exercise, we're going to work from a photograph. So you need to take a photograph of your composition, and then I want you to draw that composition, either from life or from the photograph. Either way, it doesn't really matter, but if you're going to be drawing from life, then make sure that you're looking at it from exactly the same angle from which you took the photograph. So for that purpose, it's probably better to work from the photograph for purposes of this exercise. Draw it freehand. Don't measure anything, don't put any grids down, nothing. I want you to have a really good, pure understanding of how it is that you are seeing incorrectly, if in fact you are seeing incorrectly. So do your drawing without any of the normal aids that you might normally use. So put away your measuring compass, put away your grid lines, put away any of that and just look and draw. You can do mental calculations, yes, of course, because that's what comes into drawing. So you're going to mentally compare the height to the width and that sort of thing. But I don't want you to use any artificial aids to do this. Just use your own innate ability as an artist. Okay, so now once you've done that drawing, I want you to now put it aside where you can't see it. I want to turn it over. Don't even look at it. Now I want you to do a second drawing using one of those aids that you are most likely to use. If you're an artist that uses the grid method, use the grid method. Grid up your drawing, your photograph, and then grid up your piece of paper and go ahead and draw that particular composition once again in exactly the same way, but using your grid method or your measuring method or whichever one of those aids that you prefer to use. Now once you've done your second drawing using your favorite aid, now do another drawing using an aid that you're not necessarily familiar with, something that you don't usually use. So if you usually use the grid method, now do a drawing that uses, say, the measuring method. Now I'm going to ask you to do something that is going to make most art teachers' hair curl. I'm going to ask you to trace your photograph. Put a piece of tracing paper over your original photograph and literally trace it out like a kid would. Now you're going to lay all four of those drawings next to one another, and I want you to compare them. Take your tracing, because that of course is going to be your most accurate, depending of course on your abilities to see accurately, but that should be the most accurate of the four drawings that you've got, and I want you to lay it on top of each of those drawings that you've done and see where you've gone wrong. Now of course you can do this digitally. If you do it digitally, you can scan in your drawings and you can lay them one on top of each other in, say, Photoshop and make the one layer opaque so that you can see through it. But I found that to actually print out your drawing in the beginning, not work from a digital copy, and being able to lay your tracing over it is probably the easiest, sort of most low-tech way of doing things. Now I want you to take notice of the areas that you've gone wrong. You might find that throughout all three of the drawings, it's exactly the same mistake that you've made to more or lesser degrees. You'll probably find that in your first drawing, the mistake was more obvious because you didn't have the use of various aids. And you'll find in your second drawing, where you had your favorite aid, will probably be the most accurate because that was the aid with which you were most familiar. But notice what it is that you did wrong. I will use an example here of, let's say, a hand. If you have repeatedly drawn the fingers too long, first of all, know that you are amongst millions of other artists who do the same thing. If you've drawn a face and that you have repeatedly drawn the eyes too big, also again know that you're amongst very good company. We all make that mistake. Or if you've drawn the ears too small, you're amongst very good company with that one too. But take notice of what it is that you do repetitively. That will give you an idea the next time you draw that to be careful in that particular area. It will also help you to understand what it is that you've done wrong. I notice, for example, with hands, a lot of artists will not necessarily notice how fingers might overlap one another. So a hand looking straight on will be individual fingers, but looking to the side they may overlap one another slightly, and artists are still trying to draw them as individual fingers. So that is also a mistake if you've made that one, that you will be amongst good company with. But notice what it is about your particular drawing that is consistently incorrect. And now redo the drawing without the use of aids, trying to take special notice of those particular areas where you went wrong. And don't necessarily look at the drawing and think, okay, in that area I did wrong. That's not what it's about. It's when I was doing that thing, I did it wrong. So if I was drawing overlapping petals, or if I was drawing foreshortened fingers, every time I drew something that was foreshortened or overlapping, I did it wrong. So take notice of where it is that your mind is seeing incorrectly, and teach yourself what it is about that thing that you have misinterpreted and how to correctly interpret it. Sometimes I'll see it in my own work as well as the students in the studio, where all it takes is just that your mind click and go, oh, that's what I'm doing wrong. Because it's a perception possibly that you have that's incorrect. You're not necessarily doing anything wrong in terms of your drawing or your painting, but you're perceiving it incorrectly. And sometimes all it takes for me to say to an artist, oh, wait a minute, notice how when you compare that element to that element, your scale is not quite right. And doing, the lights come on, and that problem no longer exists because they've taken notice of how their perception of, for example, scale is incorrect. In some cases it's perspective, and all you've got to do is run through a quick perspective exercise and to show them how to judge their perspective better. It's not necessarily rocket science. Sometimes it's just a small little incorrectly perceived thing, and once you know about it, you can fix the problem, and that problem will probably not exist in future drawings. And if it does, you'll be more aware of how to fix it. You're more aware of the problem so that you don't perpetuate it, and if you do perpetuate, you know how to fix it because you immediately understand where the problem has come in. So that is a very quick and very practical way of how to find what it is that you're doing incorrectly and fix it. The other thing, of course, is practice. Practice, practice, practice. There is no quick fix. There is no one thing that I can tell you that will be like taking a pill and all of a sudden, you're a great artist. It doesn't work that way. It's all about practice. So even once you've identified your problem areas, you need to work on it to be able to consistently fix that problem each time until eventually there's no longer a problem because you've worked through it so well. Thanks for watching. Your likes and your shares and your comments make more videos possible, so please go ahead and do that. And if you want to know more about the Epic Art Academy, please head on over to epicartacademy.com and I will see you there. Bye.